Greetings. We here at PLD Projects want to make it known that we wholeheartedly support the strikes by both SAG-AFTRA and the WGA against the greedy corporate studio executives. It is a fight for basic human decency. Our reviews, discussions, and critiques are in no way supporting the studios, merely dissecting the art and how these wonderful actors and writers continue to influence us on a daily basis. We thank you. PLD. PJ Campbell. 2 mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are 2 mediocre white dudes on film.
All right, I want you to ask me what kind of morning I've had, Paul.
PJ Campbell, what kind of morning have you had?
So I'm downstairs. I woke up. I knew we were doing this today, so I gave myself some time. I was gonna have breakfast. I was making, coffee and waffles for me and my girlfriend. It was a really nice morning. Everything was going great. And then I have one of those Keurig machines that has like the pot of coffee and like the single use thing. But when there's 2 of us, I'm just gonna make a pot of coffee. That just makes sense. That's
Right.
saves time. You're gonna do it that way. So I make the coffee, and the thing stops and like dings, and little red light comes on saying, "Hey, your coffee's ready to go." Perfect, great. I go to grab it, and I pull the handle off, and something cracks, and hot coffee starts spilling everywhere, and the coffee thing like cracked all the way down and around and broke off. I
Wow.
shouldn't be here today, Paul. I'm
This
Dante.
actually, you're Dante. I was going to say that's actually a pretty good analogy for this movie, I think.
Oh, wow. Shots fired. We just started.
We just started. I'm sorry to hear. I mean, you got coffee though afterwards. I assume you made it work with the single pot, and so your coffee and caffeinated. You're ready to go.
No, I have had no coffee.
Oh my God, that is a sin. That is a sin.
Just like this movie.
Just like this movie. Oh, we're gonna take shots all night. Whole podcast is. Wow, we're not gonna have a good night.
No. Also, I feel like I should just go back to bed at this point. Like, there's no world I should probably be, doing this. Like, this feels like an omen, and yet here we are. It's like the coffee was warning me not to go see the movie, even though I'd already seen it.
Yes, I'm trying retroactively to try to wipe it out of your mind. Let me give you something worse to think about than this movie. I don't know if it succeeded or not, though, because I don't even know if that would be worse for me. I can't tell. Well, at least it's longer.
I don't know. No, caffeine is always a bummer, to be fair.
True. Well, okay. This movie, we usually.
No, are you? You're really just gonna try to jump in here? It's been 3 minutes. Are you just trying to get in and out of here? Like, what is this?
Like I kind of want to rip the Band-Aid off, kind of thing. I feel like that's part of my thought process here. But you know what? Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should try to cheer ourselves up with some other conversation before we get into it. Maybe that is the right play.
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little upset though that we're doing this morning.
Oh, okay.
You kind of threw me off because I wanted to wake up early enough to listen to the new 60th special episode that just dropped, because Once and Future with David Tennant and the Paternoster Gang versus Missy dropped today, this morning. Yeah, and I was going to go listen to that, but can't do that when you have to hang out with someone talking about a movie that you didn't really like. You fuck.
I am a fuck. Yes, I fully take that badge with honor. I didn't realize it dropped today, so thank you for that. Now I know I have something that at least I can look forward to after this. That's a good thing. Something to look forward to. That's what I'm trying to do for you. I'm trying to have you have a day where you're doing something shitty, but then you have something to look forward to. Is that working?
What if I just want to listen to it like now, though, instead of talking about the Nun II?
Well, Now you're bringing it back on topic. So are we just
No,
saying
I'm
where we're
just
going?
saying. I'm just asking a simple question.
It's fair.
That's
I
all.
do.
You know.
I do want to listen. I actually saw you post also about Doctor Who posted the picture of the then and now of David
Yeah.
Tennant and
Catherine Tate.
Doctor and Donna Noble, Catherine Tate, and I didn't realize how I knew I was excited, but like watching seeing that back to back just made me just put a big old smile on my face.
Well, that
Big old smile on
between
my
that
face.
and the little Entertainment Weekly spread that they did for the 60th last week, where it had the picture of Tennant coming out of the TARDIS for the first time, and it's like a basic reshot of the first time we see him coming out of the TARDIS in the Christmas Invasion, was just really, really cool. They're very much leaning in on we know that this is like a retread and also a goodbye, and I'm really
Right.
liking it. And I was reading the quotes from Russell T Davies, which I thought was interesting. Is he said that he realized that Donna and the Doctor had a third act that he hadn't realized. And then the more he thought about it, the more he realized he had to tell that story. And he said that when he had left the show, he stayed a fan and he stayed coming up with ideas continually. So, like, sitting there waiting to see if it would come back around because he really wanted to tell that story. And that, lo and behold, he got a chance.
Interesting, because I was going to say the way they're leaning into the nostalgia factor to a degree, it's just like any other legacy sequel we've had. I mean, it's in the that's what we're doing nowadays, legacy sequels. So why not Doctor Who with its own kind of intra legacy sequel? But now that you mentioned those quotes, that's actually very exciting quotes. It feels like, I mean, it feels true to form. Russell T Davies, if nothing else, was a big fan of the series before and after. So to
Oh,
think that
yeah.
like he's had years to kind of contemplate and to continue to form stories in his head. Now he gets the chance to actually do them. It's like a second chance to do it again. That's exciting stuff, and that leads heavily into what's going to go on in November, and then of course beyond as well. So I'm very excited
Mm,
about that.
Yeah, I mean, because he said that they've already written most of Series 15 as well. Like, or is it 16? No, because Flux was 14. So
Right.
it gets all complicated, and
You
really,
got
it's not
numbers of
even like
seasons.
season.
You got numbers of doctors. You got numbers. It's all sorts of weird. You start thinking Doctor
It's all
Strange. Well, that's
sorts of weird,
silly.
but also like now the BBC's hardline on a lot of it is they're when they release some of the Blu-rays, it'll be like season 1 of the Tom Baker years, season 3 of the John Pertwee years. Like, so they're also
Oh,
trying to break down like from the original 28-year run, they're trying to like section things off so that in my head all the numbers are starting to coalesce
there's
and get strange.
way too many numbers. I'm going to use the joke I overuse. I was told there was no math, and that's just I don't just sit me down in front of the
Yeah,
TV and put in for
it was my
math.
understanding that there would be no math.
Correct. But of course, with the doctor, you're supposed to be very intelligent anyway, so maybe that's why we're supposed to. It's gonna be educational as well as entertaining. Um,
Yeah, I mean, that was initially the idea of the series. It was supposed to
yeah,
be an educational program that just happened to not it was actually not supposed to have any bug-eyed monsters. That was like the
right.
thing that came from the top of BBC originally was uh Sydney, the guy who like greenlit the show. He was famously known for being like, I want no bug-eyed creatures and no nothing like that in this show. And then of course,
That
the
changed.
show changed drastically. If you guys have never seen An Adventure in Space and Time, I really recommend it. It was like a 2-hour telly movie that they did during the 50th anniversary, and it's all about the creation of the show. And Brian Cox actually plays Sydney, and
Yeah,
he's fantastic in it.
yes,
Everyone's really great in it. It actually the
that's pretty.
crossover between people starring in it who have been in or were in Doctor Who or would end up in Doctor Who is very interesting.
Actually, it's the first time we get to see David Bradley as the first Doctor, and then also
Mhm.
became the first. It's actually kind of a surreal moment. He was the actor who played the first Doctor, and then all of a sudden he became the first Doctor, and it's kind of a interesting juxtaposition. But I really enjoyed it myself because he's a wonderful
I
actor.
loved it. I thought that was great, and I like that, because they know that he doesn't look directly like William Bradley, like, they made it that joke about, "Oh, hey, you're clearly close to regenerating, so your face looks different." Like, it's or not William Bradley, William Hartwell.
William Hartwell, Doug Bradley, David Bradley is the
Yes,
actor
David
now, the
Bradley
current
is the
actor.
actor. I started combining names in my head. I haven't had caffeine, damn it.
You're forgiven.
That's where
You're
we're at
forgiven.
this morning. I have not had caffeine, and I like that this show is just, hey, let's talk about Doctor Who now for like 30 minutes before we get into anything else because we haven't had time to do two mediocre idiots in a blue box.
That's true.
So this is what this has become, and I'm not mad about it. And I
Although
just
I'm
love that
aware.
we get comments that they're excited that we're talking about Doctor Who, but then sometimes we make people mad because apparently we like Stephen Moffat, and that's a problem.
That is a problem. That's true. I was gonna say we usually be more varied in our topics, but recently it's definitely been more. Okay, this is Doctor Who time before we get into the movie we're watching. Yeah, Stephen Moffat has not got a couple of fans. There's a couple of people who are not fans of Stephen Moffat, and I say to them, I understand, but I disagree. Especially in the case of Stephen Moffat underneath Russell T Davies. So Stephen Moffat writing for Russell T Davies is peak Moffat as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'll say this though. Stephen Moffat helped write The Adventures of Tintin. He gets a pass for life. The
Oh,
Adventures of
100%.
Tintin is one of the most charming films of all time and reminded
100%.
people, hey, Steven Spielberg can actually make blockbuster adventure films. Like it's super fun. And we love him for that. So Stephen Moffat forever gets a pass for life. My beautiful girlfriend just brought me coffee and she is the best ever. Look at
Oh,
that.
you are now caffeinated. Look at that. You have that's a keeper right there. That's a definite
I
keeper
know,
for
right?
coffee.
She texted me and she goes, "Hey, I'm bringing you coffee. I promised. I'll be quiet." And I was like, "I'm getting coffee? I'm just so happy." And she brought it in my little Batu mug from
Aw.
Star Wars Land.
Oh,
So,
nice. Very nice.
yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, because of course, if anyone saw my tweet last week where I was like, I'm pretty sure everything if someone asked me what I am, like in how I dress, in what I wear around, what I have in the house, everything is nerd chic. Nerd chic, geek chic, whatever you
Right.
want to call it. All of my mugs, everything,
Well, that
nerd
does
stuff.
definitely tracks. I mean, let's be honest.
Exactly. That's why it makes me laugh. So yes, my beautiful girlfriend, everyone, she brought me coffee, and it's a good morning now. Suddenly, I
Is your
feel like
beautiful
I'm not
girlfriend
tempting fate.
is your beautiful girlfriend part of your nerd chic, your geek chic as well? Is that included in that? I don't know.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, she's super nerdy in all the best ways. She builds Lego sets with me and likes puzzles and watches Doctor Who with us, and it's great.
That's all you need. That's all you need out of life, my friend. You're winning. You're winning.
I know. Dude, we started Good Omens last night because she hasn't seen season 1 yet, and I haven't watched season 2, but I want to watch with her. So we're watching
Right.
season 1 right now, and it's been like she goes, "Man, it reminds me of Pushing Daisies and Dead Like Me," and we never really talked about those. And I was like, "Oh my god, she's a Brian Fuller fan." And then I was like, "So have you seen Hannibal yet?" And she's like,
And
"No, not yet." And I was like, "Oh,
whoa.
so we have to watch Hannibal." And before I came up here for our lovely podcast, let me take a sip of this coffee real quick.
Oh, enjoy it. I'm gonna
Oh,
enjoy it through
well,
you.
that's
There
nice.
you go.
That's nice.
Mm.
Now I'm waking up again. All right. So we were talking about all this, and then the trailer for Fall of Usher, House of Usher dropped
It did
this
drop. I
morning.
haven't seen it yet. I have not watched it yet.
Oh yeah, I watched it before I came up. We were watching it together. She hasn't seen anything Mike Flanagan yet, so I'm very
Oh,
excited. And boy, dude, what a trailer!
yeah.
It was not what I was expecting in the best way.
Really?
It is contemporary. I
Oh,
thought it
really?
was like I thought it was like a period piece.
I thought
Well,
so
it might be a
too.
period piece, but like 70s or 80s. But I'm like 95% sure looking at that thing that this is a more contemporary set Edgar Allan Poe adaptation.
Interesting angle. I'll have to take a look at that and see. I'm definitely looking
Yeah.
forward to that. When you dropped that picture of Mark Hamill last night, just got a big old smile on my face because I love that Mark Hamill is joining the Flanagan verse, which is funny. They are calling it the Flanagan verse, even though they're not like all connected, but like they are all just connected because he's so awesome. I love everything he's done. I don't think he's missed yet, as far as I'm concerned. And I can't wait to see what he's doing. I want to see him get back to the big screen as well. So I'm
His
excited to have this conclusion as the
I'll
Netflix
be
deal.
honest. At the same time, I'm thrilled that he's also doing Dark Tower. Like I want to see him
Oh,
go back to the
absolutely.
big screen, but I also want him to focus all his time and effort on Dark Tower when the strike is over because woo, I need myself some Dark Tower, sir.
I'm interested
Correct,
very much. So
by the way.
I would like to see. I mean, I do want the Dark Tower. I do want it. I'd like to see that be. I would like to see him do a big screen movie first, and then come back. I'd take a break because he did like a bunch of series in a row, do a movie, and then come back refreshed and rejuvenated for the
I
out of home
just
television.
desperately need Dark Tower to be done correctly. The Matthew
I get that.
McConaughey movie still makes me sad.
I understand that. It is not a. It's something that's supposed to make. Well, not supposed to make you sad, but it definitely it makes everybody sad. I think. Yeah, it was not fun. It was not fun. It was good. It was kind of a cool. There were some good things about it, but it didn't overall did not come together properly at all. So yeah, but definitely give me a movie and then the Dark Tower. That's what I want from Flanagan verse at this point for me.
I'll
But he
tell
was
you right
working on
now, though,
something.
man. God damn, did I love the trailer? I think you're gonna lose your mind.
I can't wait to see it. I really can't. I almost want to watch it now, but I'm not going to. We're going to continue to go on for this podcast. I do think Mike Flanagan was working on a film as well. I don't know if the strikes are going to completely change
Well,
his.
yeah, because it was another Stephen King adaptation, right? It was one of the ones that was based on one of his short stories, I think.
No, I think there was something else he was doing. Maybe it was a Stephen King thing.
I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, yes,
Maybe
it
I
was.
thought it was.
It was.
Yeah, I
It
was
was
gonna
the
say I'm
life
like
of Chuck.
95% sure it was a Stephen King adaptation. Yeah,
It was
because
a
he's
novella
just
from the
really
life of
good
Chuck.
at that.
He's good at
I
Stephen
think Mike
King.
Flanagan is the weird successor to Stephen King in that he does the stuff that Stephen King manages to do in his books with these sprawling ensembles and casts and
Mm.
finding like these stories of horror that are actually very human. But I'm gonna say the hottest take of all time is Mike Flanagan knows how to end things. God, how much I love Stephen King, but the man can't end things very worth a damn.
Yeah,
So the
that's
fact,
true.
and I don't mean that in like, look, I love the Dark Tower, but the Dark Tower had like one of the most underwhelming finales of anything after 7 books or 8
I'm
books.
gonna blow your mind
You're
right
gonna
here.
say the thing. I know you're gonna say it.
I have not finished it. I have not
I knew
finished
you
Dark
were
Tower.
gonna say that.
I started reading Dark Tower a while ago, and then I got this kick in my head that because a lot of Doctor Who, I was about to say Doctor Who again, the Stephen King books are kind of connected worldwide. So there's a lot of connections and throwbacks to their books. I decided after reading like the 3rd book in the series, you know what? I'm going to go back to the beginning of King's bibliography and just read everything straight through. So I have a complete finished story in my mind, even if they're not connected at all. There's some connections. I just want that feeling of having read everything in the King
Paul,
book before finishing up everything. So
I respect you, but it's called Wikipedia and Google.
I don't want to do that. I want to enjoy it, my friend. I'm reading Rose
I
Battle
know,
right
but if
now.
you're like confused, at least you could be like, "Oh, that makes sense," and then when you read the book, then you'll have an understanding of what it is instead of
uh, I'm gonna get there when I
this.
get there, my friend. I'm looking forward to the whole thing. I'm on Rose Matter right now. I'm enjoying that one so far. So I will get there. Just taking my time along the way. I'm enjoying. I am smelling the roses.
Stop.
I'm
Yeah, I
enjoying
was
the
gonna say
journey.
stop smelling the fucking roses. Although this is a very Ferris Buellery. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop to look around once in a while, you might miss it.
That's exactly what I was
By the
implying.
way,
And
can we just talk about the fact that I still have this 7-Eleven Slurpee Cowboys and Aliens Daniel Craig mug
I thought that's
that
what
I
that
drink?
was.
That is
Th-
exactly what that is. I have the Harrison Ford one downstairs. I've held
That's
on
what.
to them and use them for water.
Well, you might as well. You might as well.
Yeah.
Recycling, good for the environment and all that shit.
Cowboys and Aliens is actually a really fun movie, by the way. I'm just going to throw that out there.
That's definitely a hot take. I know a lot of people do not like it. I honestly don't remember a lot of it. I remember not. I remember thinking
That's fair.
afterwards that people overhated it, but I was kind of like, I couldn't tell you a thing about it now except for Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig were in it. That's about it. That's all I can remember.
I actually quite enjoyed it, is all I'm going to say. Like, I don't know, man. It's got a good cast. It is exactly what it sells itself as. It's a movie about cowboys fighting aliens in the Old West. I'm a sucker for aliens. I'm a sucker for John Favs. I'm a sucker for Harrison Ford, Daniel Craig. I mean, Paul Dano's very good in it. Sam Rockwell's very good in it. Olivia
That's right.
Wilde's very good in it. It's got a good cast. I think Clancy Brown's in it too. Like that, it's a fun movie, man. I just rewatched it not too long ago, and I was like, huh, still holds up.
Do you own it? Do you have it in your movies anywhere?
Yeah, and it's got the director's cut for you, so it's a little bit
So I'll
better
get there.
too.
I'll get there then, absolutely. Although I did take it.
Are you saying that you have access to my movies anywhere, Paul? Do we have to have a conversation? Are you stealing my content?
Stealing, I like to think of it as borrowing.
That means you give it back.
Right. You still have it in your movies anywhere, don't you? So technically speaking,
Fair enough.
that's
All
not
right.
moving.
Well played, mediocre white man.
Actually, I took a diversion from my projects. I have a couple of projects going on. Your movies anywhere. I'm also going through the Darkness. Was it Darkness Follows, that podcast or that Search of Darkness?
Yeah. Which actually the new number 4 is coming out soon. I was seeing that advertised the other day. The one that's starting with the 90s.
Which I'm excited about. I'm very excited about
Yeah.
entirely because I love the first 3. I've been going through all those movies as well, but I did take a diversions because after watching this film, The Nun II, which we're going to get to eventually, I saw the preview again for the new. We will. I saw the preview for The Exorcist, the newer preview for the Exorcist movies, and I realized it'd been such a long time. I think I only ever saw the first Exorcist. I can't believe I didn't see the other ones, and I'm surprised at that. So I figured it was time for me to sit down against your warning.
Told you not
and
to
I
do
get
this,
it.
God damn it.
But I had to because I'm a completist. I want to see things for myself because
I
we often
that.
agree, there are wild random occasions where we completely differ. So I have to at least test it for myself.
The Exorcist 2 is by far one of the worst sequels of all time.
I watched The Exorcist first, and I reacclaimed that it is a banger, just like I knew it was. I love that movie very much.
Very glad that you remembered that The Exorcist is a good movie.
I watched The Exorcist 2 Heretic for the first time. I believe it was the first time. And yes, you were right. Laughably bad. Like I was laughing throughout most of the movie, and I'm like, this is not what I'm supposed to be feeling right now at all.
Everything about it is awful. Like
it is god awful.
The music is super odd and weird, and there's all those like weird shots of flies and weird things going on, and like all the stuff with Reagan is just like laughably bad. I feel like the new one is gonna say that none of the other things happened, basically, in the same way.
It's the same thing Halloween did. I think it's what David Green's Halloween did. This is going to be a sequel just to the original Exorcist. That's it.
Which is a little bit of a bummer because like not that it matters, but like Exorcist 3 is actually really good, but it really probably holds no bearing overall to what they're doing regardless, just because it's so its own thing.
I just watched that. I just did get to Exorcist 3 now. I did, and I did really enjoy that one. Although it is did you really watch different. I didn't watch the
theatrical.
I watched the theatrical.
Okay. Yeah.
I couldn't find the other one. So I read about the notes about the other one, Legion, like that was supposed to be closer to the book, or whatever than it was, but I didn't find it anywhere.
Third act.
Which is weird because you could definitely tell when you watch this movie, you can definitely tell there's like this cutoff point where it's like, okay, this is where the studio interfered and said, give us an exorcism because we need something like that. Because it becomes like a totally different movie after that. And like the funny thing is, like, I don't know. Did you see the director's cut or the Legion?
I own it. Yeah, I have it on Blu-ray.
Okay, and was it? Did you think it was better, worse, the same? Like,
better.
You think it's better?
It's better.
Okay.
That's not a dig at the theatrical cut because I actually think the theatrical cut overall is good for what that's worth. But I just think that it is more cohesively the movie that it sets out to be when you watch the director's cut.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm interested in seeing how it is because again, like the first.
Well, when you're here visiting,
maybe
in Woodsboro.
In Woodsboro,
that's
right?
yes,
on Elm Street.
In Woodsboro, yes, on Elm Street. We'll watch it because I have it. Yes,
that's because like it is very intriguing.
Haddonfield, Woodsboro, by the way.
Haddonfield, Woodsboro, yes. It definitely sets off to be one movie, and 2/3 away, it definitely jumps ship. But I can almost understand why the studio interfered a little bit in a way
because you're calling it The Exorcist 3.
Because you're calling it The Exorcist 3, right? You need to have some kind of exorcism type thing in it, and I don't think it actually hurt the story as much. However, I am interested to see what the original vision would have been because the original vision was also very interesting as well. So.
I'll say this though, it's got we've all talked about it ad nauseum to this point, but like it has the all-time great jump scare of any horror film. The long hallway shot is iconic. Like for a real great reason, the build in that scene is monumentally tense.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that is the all-time great jump scare. Filmmakers could learn to use jump scares like that. Michael Chavez,
actively and proactively and doing them right. Yes, Michael Chavez. Okay. It is that time a little bit, but I want to say one thing. Okay.
No, I was going to say though, Brad Dourif in The Exorcist 3, like people forget. Because in the horror community, for the most part, Brad Dourif is known as Chucky. Like,
Right.
He's been voicing that character since the original Child's Play, and for the most part, that seems to be what he's so well known for. But the thing about Brad Dourif is he is so talented, and he is so good in this movie, and his performance is honestly, it's almost criminal he was not nominated for an Oscar.
I could see that. I could absolutely see him being nominated because he was that phenomenal. He is always that good. You put him in any role, and
Lord of
he
the
does
Rings.
that role. Lord of the Rings, he was great in that. He was great in the zombie Halloween movies. He was the shining star of
He
those
was the
Halloween
thing we
movies.
talked about the entire time where we were like, "Man, Brad Dourif, like, put that guy in everything because he's that good all the time." Like, he's easily one of the best parts about Alien Resurrection. He was great when he was on
Absolutely.
Deadwood. Like, I think he was even in the X-Files, if I'm remembering correctly, and he was great in the X-Files. Like, you look at his filmography and all the things he did, he's just that good. And of course, for me, he was in Critters 4 because we, stand the Critters franchise in Haddonfield, Woodsboro.
Well, also, as part of my interpretation of how I stand him, he was in a movie called Touching Home where he played Ed Harris's brother. So those are
Of
two
course,
characters.
of course, there it is.
There we go for that as well. Dorff is great no matter what role he's put into. That's the thing. He's a chameleon. He can be the horror guy, but he can be like because his role in Halloween wasn't horror. He wasn't horror. He was like the more down to earth family man, like the true
Yeah.
like the guy we were looking at. He was actually the best audience interpretation. And he hits those roles out of the park easily. No matter what kind of role you put him in, he's going to give you an extra professional performance. He gives you that gravitas that you need. He's one of those. He's actually one of those Ed Harris actors I talked about. You can put him in anything; he's going to make the film better, no matter what it is.
Oh, absolutely. I think of that all the time with him, and it's like that. There's a reason that he's so just good in it. Like, I liked when he was on Psych. I thought that was really fun because he was in that episode Sean Interrupted.
Mm,
Um, he's just a good actor, man. He really
really is.
just is. And so, it's fun seeing him do stuff like that. And I really, have you been watching? I'm a season behind right now on Chucky. I really need to catch up, but
I am too.
he was phenomenal in season 1.
Yes, he was. Absolutely was. He knows that part so well. I believe he could do that part in his sleep. I really do.
Also, Fiona Dorff, also equally as talented.
Yes.
Just throwing that out there.
Yes.
She's incredible.
She is very good. I don't know why she hasn't been in more things yet. Because like her performance should spark definitive interest in every kind of project. Because exactly, and she has the right genes. So get her in roles, people. Get her in roles.
You know what would make the Nun 2 better? If Fiona Dorff had been in it.
And Brad Dourif had been in it. You know what else would have been better with? You know what else would have been better with? Damien Bashir. Just throwing that out.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Fuck it.
Let's do
Band-Aid's gone. It's
Gone,
2023 because The Nun made $500 million and was the most profitable film in the Conjuring franchise back when it came out. So of course the studio was going to be like, "Hey, it's time to make another Conjuring movie, but we don't really have the cast for another Conjuring movie just yet. They're doing other things. What do we do?" Well, I guess that means we're making a sequel to The Nun finally because the last one made $500 million because people really liked it. So go ahead and we're going to make a new one. And who are we going to get to come back? Corin Hardy, right?
Right.
Nope.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
Nope. Right. Wan? No. So James Wan's going to do it. No. Gary Dauberman's still going to write it, right?
Right.
No. Everything that could possibly go wrong to make a sequel to The Nun has happened with The Nun 2. And I'm just going to straight up say it. My tweets the other day kind of spoke for themselves in my frustration. People are really hard on The Nun. We went to bat for that movie on here.
We did.
I'm a big fan of the first Nun movie because it takes balls for someone in the studio system to be handed a film in a high-profile IP franchise like this and go, you know what we need? We need to make a Hammer horror film. And WB went, we have no idea what that means. Sure. And gave Corin Hardy money to go make a Hammer horror based film in the Conjuring universe. The Conjuring universe is pretty grounded in most capacities until you get to like Annabelle Comes Home and like, but there's a sense of more like modern filmmaking and they're all period pieces, but they all feel very current and modern, that's their chic. That's what they feel like. I'm going to keep using that word chic. It's very fun. It's very cool. I wear fezzes now. Fezzes are cool. So anyway, chic. We're sitting there watching this play out, and it's a beautiful thing because no one's going to make a Hammer horror film these days in
Right.
general. Like, we get them every once in a while from Hammer themselves, like they made The Woman in Black, and then they made a sequel to The Woman in Black. But Hammer horror is pretty much a dead genre.
Pretty
But
much.
that's what made The Nun special. It was like this weird Hammer horror film that also had like an air of adventure that we were kind of talking about. But
Right.
it was like a horror adventure, and it was kind of cool, and it was a little different. And yeah, like it's way wacky compared to everything going on in the rest of the Conjuring universe. But like that's what made it special to me. That's what made it fun. That's why I liked it so much. And you had Damien Bouchier, daddy of all these like genre, you know, movies, because he's been doing so much shit. Like between him and Pedro Pascal, guys, leave some fucking genre films for the rest of them. But also
Right.
don't, because I love both of them being in everything. Like, put
Absolutely.
them in Star Wars, put them in the DC movies, put them in the Marvel movies. I don't care. Put them in Godzilla versus Kong. It's cool.
Put
Do
it on
the
my
thing.
screen.
Yeah, put them on my screen, letting them ham it up and be doing genre stuff. Hot take: Wonder Woman 84 still better than the original. Pedro Pascal is awesome in it. It's a
Whew.
80s high fantasy. It doesn't mean that it's like a better movie, but boy, do I watch it more.
Okay. That's definitely a hot take. I'm not going to
It
engage on that.
is,
That
but
feels
so
like
I'm.
that's an
You know
entirely
what,
different
man?
podcast.
Fuck it. I'm putting all my cards on the table at this point.
I will
I
say
am.
that's
I'm just
entirely
going to put
different podcast.
all my cards on the table.
That's fine. You can be that wrong sometimes. It's okay. It's where we do differ at times, and that feels like another podcast entirely, which we'll get to at some point, maybe. But I will say one
Maybe, motherfucker, I bought Flash because of you.
thing. That's another podcast we're going to do at some point. That's going to be a fun one. Let me tell you though, my first initial thoughts about the Nun II. All I have to say is, after I left this film, I sat down. I had a beer. I
I didn't
kind of
even
had
let
a
me
tear
finish
flow.
my.
I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to, Warren Brothers, Warren Brothers, Warren Brothers. I implore you. I implore you. I beg of you. I get down on my hands and my knees. I will sacrifice my fourth born. I don't have one yet, but do not let Michael Chavis direct another Conjuring movie.
Wait. I need you to walk back real quick. You said yet.
Well, yes, it's not going to happen. You never know the future, but not in this. I don't see any way that's going to happen now because the wife is fixed. So it ain't going to happen as far as I know. So unless I'm doing something outside the marriage, I ain't going to have a fourth born.
So wait, your hypothetical fourth child cannot happen. So you're
Sacrificing nothing, I
begging
guess, really.
WB not to do something and putting it on the life of a being that will never live, which means
Correct.
that this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, probably not. But I don't know what I'm talking
That
about.
means that there can't your pact doesn't make sense, which means that because you've done this, we're going to get an announcement like tomorrow that Michael Chavez is directing The Conjuring 4.
It's already going to happen. We already know this.
I know.
Talked about this.
I know
he directed
it's
3.
happening.
He directed. He's in line. He's making money. This film made like $88 million worldwide in its first weekend. It's already like doubled, more than double its budget. It's gonna happen because Warner Brothers goes, oh, he makes us money. Oh, I bet you he's a competent director and that he gets things done on time and under budget and everything
How
else.
did this movie cost $16 million more than the first?
I have not a clue, because this is like the most blandly set piece, most awfully filmed piece. Like, I can't even see half the film. It's one of those films, which I freaking hate when they do. You can film dark scenes and shadowy scenes and still light up the people you're trying to see. There's ways you can do it. It's been done by many filmmakers over the years. I don't know what the problem is here, but Michael Chavis.
I know exactly what the problem is. The problem is studios hiring incompetent filmmakers that they keep making movies that are making money, but they're not actually showing actual
artistic
talent.
integrity.
There's no heart. There's no. I believe that Michael Chavez believes he's making movies that are good, and I believe that he wants to be a good filmmaker, but I do not see that in the movies. I see a filmmaker who could be fairly competent if asked, but he's missing something. He's missing something that James Wan has showed in this franchise. He's missing the thing that David Sandberg has shown in this franchise, or Gary Dauberman. There's a reason that the guys like Wan and Dauberman, and now, as we've seen, Sandberg, have moved on to other things and gone and done other things. Corin Hardy, even, again, he went in with a vision. Hammer horror film. That is the movie I'm making, and I do the thing. there's not a single part of me that has watched this film or any of the films by him. And now, granted, mind you, we're not super hard on The Conjuring 3. We both like it.
Yeah, it's fine.
You can
It's
go back and
decent.
listen. We talk about it. It's definitely a step down from the first two because it's not
Absolutely.
James Wan. But it's not a like terrible film. It just feels so, well, I'm gonna say the word, almost amateurish compared to the first and the
It's just
second.
bland. It's bland.
It's lacking any heart. It's
Right.
lacking substance. It's lacking. He's just not doing the thing, and I
He's
can't figure out
lucky.
what it is. He's lucky because his movies keep making money.
And he's lucky also for Conjuring 3, it has Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga to kind of shoulder a little bit of that load. You get that chemistry, that shared love of those characters, and that helps like kind of push it through. Like if they didn't have those actors in there, it would have been down in the lower, at least lower part of the franchise, as far as I'm concerned. Having and John Noble also, by the way, in that film, having those actors in there really helped sell that movie because Chavez did nothing with it. Chavez is that competent pitched for a board director where you just kind of insert director here and you'll get a money and under budget film here. And that's all the studio cares about. That's all WB cares about at this point. It's a simple money making exercise. And I'm not naive enough to know. I know it's a business. I get it. But you can have a business and still have an artistic value to it. James Wan shows that he has a unique vision. Malignant was one of the better sellers for you guys at this point. The original Conjuring. In other hands, I got to tell you, in the other hand, any other hands, or not any other hands, but like Michael Chavez's type of hands, the original Conjuring would have been a run of the mill horror that we would not be talking about today.
100%. There would be no franchise around it.
Not at all, because there's not a whole lot special about like the story per se, or like the performances. Besides, Wilson and Vera Farmiga are good at what they do, but you add that artistic value of what Juan brought with that unique style, and that's when it becomes, oh, this is something to watch. This is something to actually IP off of. Now you're down to the nitty gritty, and they've all left, and we're left with the fucking sausage factory people, and that's not going to get it done. It just felt.
But I mean,
tired.
to your point, right? Like that's why when you look at Annabelle Creation, I know that you and I have very differing views on Annabelle Creation, but like Sandberg had a vision. And it feels unique to itself. It feels like it has a story and it's doing something that someone sets out to do, and it's human, and it works.
I didn't hate Creation. I thought Creation was fine.
I know, but I like it more. I like it much more than you do. Like that. If you go back and listen, we've talked about it since. That's one of our more tense episodes because it's one of the few times where I'm like, Paul, I don't understand, and I'm getting frustrated. And Paul's like, yeah, but I don't understand why you like this. And we're like butting heads a little bit. And it's almost comical because we're both, it's like neither of us needs us to like the movie. Like as long as we like it, that's really what matters.
Right.
But for some reason, like that one is like a sticking point movie. And so I know you don't hate it, but I like it much more than you do, and I just think it shows Sandberg as a much more competent filmmaker. But even
100%.
again, like Gary Dauberman, Annabelle Comes Home, similarly, also feels like so unique and so it has all those things that you're hoping that a Conjuring film will have in this universe. But it also has the thing I'm hoping for from a director, and that's his first movie, mind you, as a director. And yet it has that heart and that emotion. Again, to your point, it helps that he also gets Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, but they're only in it at the beginning and the end. The rest is all on him. And like he has great characters and a great sense of direction and a great sense of style. Annabelle Comes Home is arguably the most fun the franchise ever is.
Yeah, no, I remember like we both agreed on that one. Outside of I think that's my third favorite outside of the original Juan ones, outside of the Juan ones, because they had a sense of fun and style that the rest of the films don't really have. And then Nun is up there.
Yeah, 100%, right? Because we've talked about it. The hammer horror of the Nun is part of what I like about it so much. It's why it's fun. It's why it works. So that gets us into the Nun II.
Right.
And immediately, here's the funny thing. I remember being real worried out the gate because of Chavez. We both talked about it. I think we were on stream when the announcement happened, even, and we talked about this on stream. And it was funny because I look at it, and it's like, why are there 3 writers on this movie? Number one, out the gate, I'm already like, huh, that's interesting.
Mm.
But one of the writers is Akilah Cooper, and I think that Akilah Cooper was the last writer on, and Akilah was the one who wrote Megan and is writing Megan 2 and wrote
Right.
Malignant. And
Yeah.
she's been working a lot in the James Wan business. And I really like Hellfest. She also wrote Hellfest. But Malignant is one of my favorite movies of 2021, and I
Same.
think it's a banger of a film by Wan.
Same.
So that was the one that gave me hope. Because I remember that the announcement was that Chavez was going to direct and Akilah Cooper was coming in to rewrite the movie. But at
There
that point,
is the
there'd already
problem.
been other writers. Mhm.
That is the problem. Akilah, at this point, it really feels like that Juan or Saffron, whoever, was bringing Akilah Cooper in to really kind of save the day. And she's only so much she could do, I think. Although she did write the original story, I kind of feel like that somebody wrote the screenplay around what she wrote, and then she kind of came back in to fix the screenplay. Maybe I don't know, but like I agree with you. Looking at Akilah Cooper's past, I think this is a good thing. This is a good thing. It's going to be. Unfortunately, where did it get lost? I don't know. I don't know where it got lost in the translation somewhere. Maybe is it Chavez's? Is it all Chavez's fault? I'm laying a lot of blame on Chavez, but like I don't even know if it can all be Chavez at this point. Get it?
I fucking knew it. Sorry. I just wanted to confirm a thing in my head that I had a feeling was the truth. And I just saw it on the bottom. I'm just going to jump into the very last thing that really pissed me off about this movie. It's
Okay.
literally the end of the movie, which is the mid-credit scene, which, number one, why the fuck are we doing mid-credit scenes now in the Conjuring universe? No offense, they're not Marvel. They shouldn't be doing it. Like, let the Conjuring universe be the Conjuring universe. But the scene in the mid-credits
I saw
is a
that.
deleted scene from The Devil Made Me Do It. I knew it. I had this feeling. I
Yeah.
just knew that they took a scene from another movie and just put it in there. So they're just doing it just because, but it also makes it that much worse because that was a scene that was for another movie that they're just using for this one. That is fucking bullshit to try to tease another film. Fuck you. Just fuck you.
That well, I wonder, just throwing out there, I don't know how much was just a writer's thing. Is it a writer's strike thing at all? Anything to do with the strikes? I don't know. Anything to do with the strikes. But either way, it is a boring choice. It is an awful choice. And I got to tell you, having that scene in there made the film seem like such a afterthought. Like we are doing this film as a placeholder to get us back to Patrick and Vera. That's what it felt like. Like it's such a crappy way to do it too. And it's like you're gonna tease it at the end. It's like this doesn't really matter. You're here to see what's coming next. And it blew my mind when I saw it scene. I thought I would be excited about it. I thought I'd be happy to see Patrick because I am always happy to see Patrick and Vera together because I love that twosome. It just retroactively made it worse, and I didn't think that was possible.
Well, but not just makes it worse, but like it also is not consequential to the movie.
Right.
Like that's the other thing. That there's no reason for that scene to be in this movie other than, hey, Conjuring universe film. And therein lies the biggest problem with this film is that everything it's trying to do retroactively feels like it is outside of the Conjuring universe in all the wrong ways.
Yeah.
And this is exactly my point. This movie actually undoes and kind of breaks the continuity in its ending. Not the mid-credit scene, but the things that it's saying about Maurice.
Right. Maybe. I mean, there's always a case they could walk that back. It's always ways to do that. But I don't disagree that like it did feel like he was good again and he was fine again at the end. And like the fact that he's not coming up in the Conjuring 1 chronological timeline does make you think, well, what the fuck happened then in between at this point?
Yeah, so we're gonna say that unfortunately for Maurice, the third time was the charm, and that Valak finally got him again. Like, is that really what we're gonna say? And ultimately, at the end of the day, like the Nun II's biggest problem is it doesn't know what movie it wants to be. So, in the same sense that the first film was trying to do its own thing, I find a lot of frustration in the fact that instead of trying to just do more of the Hammer horror and something interesting in that direction, the movie becomes like this very bland, very by the numbers, very just stereotypical horror film. But also, it's not because it tries to lean in on the fact that the first Nun has that weird sense of adventure. So they try to make it a globe-trotting Indiana Jones horror film, and that doesn't work at all. Like, that is not at all working in this movie's favor.
Or it also could be looking like, actually, as our friend Sabrina Ramirez posted on Letterboxd, Valak is collecting her own Catholic Infinity Stones. They had the blood of Jesus Christ in the first film, and had the eyes of St. Lucy in this film. Who knows? We're gonna have the whole gauntlet together before Conjuring 1, and
Right.
maybe Valak can snap and make everything. I don't know. I just like appreciate that. But you're right, though. It's exactly what I'm saying. Like, they try to do so much of this movie that it's not, and that's part of the reason why the Nun was so successful, is that it tried to be one thing and stuck with it the entire time, and made that thing good, instead of trying to like make this a bunch of different things, and so thereby none of them worked, and it kind of diluted everything about the whole property. It just, on so many levels, like the ending seems so cheap and easy compared to the original Nun, rather, because
Yeah.
it just didn't get any time to shine. It was kind of like, I understood what it was going for, this like idea that like, here we are with Thaisa having gone through so much that her face should be a struggle. You have Storm Reed, who I I'm so mixed on Storm. I love Storm as an actress. I love her in a lot of properties. And I do think she has a good job here. Although I can't help it. I don't know if was Storm, or if this was a directing choice, or if it's Storm, because sometimes it's just people in general. But when you put them in like a period piece, they don't fit. For me, like Storm didn't feel, Storm felt like a 2023 person in a period piece, instead of actually living in that age. And I don't know if that's the direction, or if that's just Storm herself. I know sometimes people just don't fit in period pieces at all. It doesn't work for me. At least for me, I don't know. But Storm only halfway worked for me here. That also took me out. But her having no faith was also a big plot point of this film to a degree. But then it kind of like, they believe in the blood of Jesus Christ. Like, how is it that these two nuns can just go, I believe that this wine is the blood of Christ, and that's going to take out Valak, when like the blood of Jesus Christ was needed, like the real blood of Jesus Christ was needed in the first film. It just,
Well, and not just that. So the movie also is like weirdly a superhero origin. And again, let's talk about how far out of this franchise at this point we're moving. But
right.
like all the stuff where Irene is revealed to just be the descendant of the Saint
Lucy.
Lucy. And then there's this whole moment of her getting caught on fire and then she survives, and like they straight up just turn Irene into a superhero. We are now like so past what these films should be,
Right.
especially considering how grounded the first actually is.
Right.
And I mean The Conjuring specifically. Look, the Conjuring spinoffs have all to varying degrees like gone off the rails a little bit in the reality pushing. Like Annabelle Creation was no stranger to that. Annabelle Comes Home was no stranger to that. But the times that they would do it in movies like that, it was at least a little more believable, especially because of the weird trinkets in the Warren house. So, like, I believed in, like, there was the werewolf case that they allegedly went on, right? So, when a werewolf shows up and Annabelle Comes Home, it doesn't break the reality of the universe to me in the same way, because there's factual evidence, quote unquote, around that happening. At the same time, there's no world where this makes sense in this universe. We're going so far that this like demon is catching people on fire and she's part of a sacred fucking bloodline that saves her from like, what are we doing?
Why the whole
Where are we at?
Everything about Lucy is just kind of weird to me. First of all, the eyes of St. Lucy, like who decides right away? I mean, I got to figure that's what it started with. Like, okay, well, we need a MacGuffin of some kind. The eyes of St. Lucy. So you can't even ever see the eyes. You get this like little package that the eyes are in, which just weakens the whole. It becomes even more of a MacGuffin within a MacGuffin, because
again, it's an Indiana Jones movie,
right? 100%, 100%, and like the idea that like then you again, like you just said, like she's all of a sudden descending from Lucy. Does that mean Vera is also descendant from Lucy? Because maybe it seems like Lucy and Irene and Vera are supposed to be related somehow. I hope that finally gets brought up in The Conjuring 4, or somehow it's connected. I kind of have a feeling it might not be at this point, because it's just going out of whack.
Yeah, I've 100% checked out on the idea that they're going to actually tie them together. I really don't think it's.
See, that's the only reason I think they will is I think that was Chavez's idea of putting that fucking deleted scene in there, is not just to lead to The Conjuring 4, but hopefully, I'm hoping that the idea is we're going to put this in here because now we've seen Irene basically be the same type of character for a long time now, and obviously the Farmiga connection is kind of strange, but meta version of that. So having Vera at the end there is this idea that yes, this will connect, because Chavez came out and said something effective. There's a lot of like Conjuring references in here and how it's going to fit onto the next film. I'm hoping that's what he's talking about, because everything else I don't see what he could be talking about, unless they're talking about Maurice again. But if that's the case, then you blew it by having the ending you had. So
But also, like, as far as it seems, Last Rite sounds like like I don't think they're about to do a midquel, right?
right,
You're clearly going to make a Conjuring 4.
right,
So the Maurice thing has already been dealt with as far as the Conjuring universe is concerned.
right.
So it
Yeah,
can't be that. So it has to be something else.
you would think. I would hope that'd be the case.
I bet you that they're just going to make it fucking the Last Rite is going to be that they're just going to go up against Valak again, which again just seems boring.
Yeah, yeah. We've already had Valak against them, and they're defeated Valak, so there's no reason to have them come back. And it's not like a reoccurring villain in terms of like in a comic book. This is not a comic book story. Not a comic movie.
I would argue that the Nun 2 is clearly a comic book film.
Right,
clearly
right. Not supposed to be. This franchise
not
is
supposed
not supposed to be that.
And I'm gonna say it right now. Like, I think the weird thing for me is that this movie also wants to do this thing where it wants very badly to be Annabelle creation, like down to it's set in a school with a bunch of schoolgirls in the same way that Annabelle creation is, and you're trying to put these kids in the middle of this franchise because the hope is that you're going to want to care about these kids, right?
Right.
Except the thing is that in Annabelle creation, I actually give a shit about all the girls at the school.
Right.
In this movie, I hate the one so badly, I just want her to die. I've never rooted so hard for a teenager to die since watching a Friday the 13th film.
Again, this is not supposed to be a Friday the 13th film, that's for sure.
They're clearly trying to riff on that, right? Like,
right.
Oh, hey, it worked for Annabelle creation, the other second film where they felt like they bungled the first film, if you will, because Annabelle obviously was awful. So they tried to retroactively, do something more interesting.
Right.
Except here, the problem is that the interesting thing about the Nun was what it already was.
Right. 100%. I agree. The school setting was just weird to me a little bit. I also think that, again, this is part of it trying to do too much. They bring Maurice in. They have, frankly, the whole film was boring setup. Like in a film that's a sequel, this felt like it should have been an origin story, because like you can understand the origin story taking a little while to get going until you have that moment where Maurice does the, albeit cliched but still kind of effective moment where he just kind of like, you realize he's evil kind of thing. He comes up with the eyes and the evil grin. From then on, the story picked up and actually was the film, not that you wanted it to be, but it actually at least moved, at least was like it kind of moved forward. Until that, I was checked out so many times. And this is not exactly a long film. This is not even 2
it's almost
film.
2 hours though. It's much longer than it needs to be. That's the other problem.
Well, yeah, that's what and it's the beginning part that you need to cut out things. First of all, the opening segment, which was just nonsensical, it was just like I don't need something. I didn't need to see that. I'd rather have opening up talking about that this thing happened rather than showing it as this happened. Because it's like, I don't know who this kid is, this priest is, and then they're just gonna set it on fire. Okay, that's kind of cool, whatever. It felt nothing. So like, okay, let's move on. Let me tell you about the real stuff now.
I'll say this. The odd thing is like, you're not wrong that I didn't need to see it, and yet that was the most interesting part of the movie. I thought that was the most well-directed part of the movie, too. I thought it was really well done. Like, for the first 10 minutes of the movie, I was actually super locked in. And I thought it was, like, very atmospheric, and I was like, huh, that's weird. Like, I'm really vibing with this. Like, because I had seen we have that conversation text thread with our friend Jeff, and you had put in there how aggressively fine you thought the movie was. And I saw it before I went in because I saw it after I went to work, and you saw it before me. And so I kind of had that in the back of my head. I hadn't replied because I didn't want to say anything. I was trying to go in with no real preconceived notion to what I thought the film was going to be.
Right.
And so like, I went in and I was like, huh, I'm surprised Paul feels this way. Like the opening's really good. And
And
it goes off the fucking rails quick.
it might be that it was the like maybe I did like it a little bit at first. It was kind of retroactively after we left that and took the rest of the journey to get towards the end. I was kind of like, well, where are you going to cut things out of? And that's something that could have been cut, even though you're right. It probably was the best filmed thing, was the best directed a bit of it for sure. But then everything else after that was just so slow and boring. I could have cared less about Maurice and his creepy like friendship with Sophie. Compared to
The fact that Maurice is the character they brought back, and I get why, and I get what they were going for, but I actually think it was a mistake because I don't think he's interesting. And the truth of the matter is they, as much as I like Taissa Farmiga, and I think she's as good as she can be in this, is that they killed off the most interesting character off screen between movies,
cholera.
and that was Damien Bouchier.
Cholera.
When
they said that,
look, man. Go ahead.
I completely checked out. As soon as they said that, I was like, fuck this movie. At that point, quite frankly.
So I think this is about the moment that the between this. So before we find out, number one, that Damien Bouchier's character is dead, is that there's this whole scene where these nuns are talking about the events of the first movie.
Right.
And they're telling all the nuns in this nunnery that for some reason they're deciding they need to tell this story. There's no explanation to the why. They're just telling the story of the first movie, but they don't know somehow, and let this make sense. They have no idea that Irene is the nun that this was.
Right.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay. The nun of this famous story, quote unquote, that you're telling, you have no idea she's in your habit. Great. Fine. Fuck it. Fine. I will let that slide, I guess. It makes no sense, but. But then in doing that, then like Irene walks in and starts to hear the story, and she like gets up and leaves, and Storm is the only one who notices. So not only that, then the other thing is these nuns also think that Damien Bouchier is still alive.
Right.
They're saying that he went and became a priest and all of these like, or an archbishop or whatever it was. And you're like, sure, great, fine, whatever. Like, guys, I'm begging you, if you're going to make mistakes or if you're going to make story decisions like this, at least do it in a way that makes sense. Yes. I would have done anything for it to be the reveal that Valak had gotten Damien Bouchier's character. Like, do anything that makes it feel more heroic. Honestly, he should have been the opening. Yes. They should have found a way to have Damien Bouchier back, and that's how you do it. You make him the opening character.
That would have worked for me. I would have hated it still because he would have died. He was my favorite part of the whole film. I get that, but at the same time, that actually gives it a little bit more weight instead of this random priest, this random kid with a big old thing of wine that all I could see was like, okay, that's going to break.
I knew immediately that it was going to break. Like that,
I mean, break somehow.
It was Chekhov's wine glass.
Right, exactly. I was like, that's done. But that would have given the whole thing weight. And you start the film, you're like that. You're kind of like, oh shit, this is what's going on. We already got rid of Damien Bouchier. We're done with Father Burke. Now it's completely up to Taissa, which gives it a little more of that. And then she is supposedly, that's the end of the first film was her finding her faith and finding her strength in her faith and everything else. So now she would actually have to put that to the test without a mentor such as Damien Bouchier. I mean, they get that anyway, but they do it by killing him off screen with cholera, adding no weight to anything. It was just a passing comment and like fuck. And that, it's so, and you kill this poor other priest who we know nothing about and don't give a fuck about.
Oh, just because he had, he was part of a special secret society of Catholic Freemasons or something that were protecting the eyes.
Something like that. I barely even got that. Like I was kind of like, I don't care.
That was the whole thing, and that was like, and here's the other thing, right? So the movie, they make it the point that that Valak is back, and Valak is like on this revenge tour to get the eyes or whatever, and all signs point to going back to Romania. So why not have the school set in the same Romanian church,
right,
as the first movie?
Right. Absolutely. That would make sense. But no, we're doing this whole traveling along thing. They're heading right there, and then Irene decides to go. Well, right, Reed's like not in a great place anyway. Still, for whatever reason, she's still not where she wants to be. She still seems unsettled. And there's no real explanation about that, to be honest with you. Kind of feels like I thought we got there with her last time, but then they ask her to go, and she goes, and she brings Storm along with her. And you liked Storm
I
from
mean,
from that same text
here's what I'll
thread,
say. I like Storm Reed in the movie because I thought she added an air of interesting dichotomy, if you
Mhm.
will. Um, except the truth of the matter is to your point, like she stows away though. She doesn't. It's not even that Irene brings her. Remember, Deborah like gets on the train and hides,
Right,
and then
against
finds her on the
everything.
train, and
Right, we
she's
have
like, "Well, you're going to need help." But the other thing is why is Deborah wanting to do this? Because as far as I was aware, about 10 minutes ago, she had no faith and didn't want to be here.
absolutely. And they try to do this opening sequence where we first get introduced to Deborah. Is she's like she didn't go to confession, which makes the mother mad, and she has cigarettes. So like, okay, she's the bad girl. None, I get. I guess she has no faith. Exactly your point. I guess it does show that they had like a little bit of a relationship, a friendship there. Obviously, Irene had kind of taken her under her wing a little bit. But
Yeah.
to your point, I agree. Like to the fact that like she's gonna go off and like hang out or like run away. I'd rather have said like either have Irene go, you know what? She needs this. She needs to come along with me. She needs to see what faith leads to and how faith being strong can save you, whatever, something like that. That makes sense. But like her just stowing away, just yeah, didn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
You're right. It doesn't work. And that's the bigger point, right? And I'm a big proponent. We talk about it here all the time. When it comes to watching movies, you need to watch the movie in the way that the movie is presented to you. You
Right.
don't you don't critique a movie for it not being the movie you wanted it to be, you critique it for the movie that it is. So as frustrated as I am that it is not the Nun 1, I'm not critiquing it for not being the Nun 1. I think it's a problem and it's a disappointment that it doesn't follow the Hammer formula, don't get me wrong, but that's not why this movie doesn't work. This movie doesn't work because it doesn't know what it wants to be. It's just
No.
lazy and haphazard, and it doesn't make sense. And I think one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to stuff like this, and Chavez is fucking famous for it now, at least in my mind, is that he tries to recreate scenes from other better, more memorable movies
Mm.
than the movie that he is making. And the moment he starts to do that, it becomes a problem because you're over promising on a thing you can't deliver on, or you're just kind of aping something that's really well known and already famous and works and is beloved for a thing. But now you're trying to do it because of that. And you look kind of foolish for doing it that way, in so much that they deliberately rip off the scene involving the Well of Souls in Raiders of the Lost Ark for this movie. In the same way that
Yeah.
The Conjuring 3 opens with the Exorcist shot.
Right. Absolutely. To your first point, it's right. This didn't need to have the same tone. It didn't need to have the same Hammer horror vibe. I mean, quite frankly, look to a more famous version of that. We had Alien and we had Aliens, completely different genres of film. They both work because they both chose a path, stuck to it, and made their movie. Just happened to be connected as far as character wise and worldwide, universe wise, whatever. That would be fine if he had chosen a path to follow on the Nun 2. The Nun 2, I did not see a path. I saw a smorgasbord of influences. I saw a smorgasbord of attempts to try to like put something on screen, but did not create any kind of through line that worked. It had a mess of characters. I didn't know who I was supposed to be following at any given time. And again, taking away Bashir took away that kind of like guiding star moment. I think Thais is supposed to be that in this film. And it's not any detriment to her because she actually does a very good job with what she's given, I think. And when she's given good material to work with, she can do wonders. She's just
Well,
not that same kind of ball of fire that like that, even that Vera and Patrick are, to be honest with you.
I just think that it really gets frustrating too when I look at this. And again, looking at what they're doing story-wise, part of my frustration is that I never get the sense, honestly, that Irene is not or is even having a crisis of faith within the film.
Right. Right.
He's just more she's going, "No, Val can't be back," over and over and over again.
Right.
I never get the idea that she's actually having this crisis of faith that she's supposed to be having. And again, I think that ultimately, had they just set the film back where the first one started, you might have been able to make that argument. You might have
Yeah.
been able to get away with it, because if you force her to go back to the place where the horror happened the first time and
Right.
you kind of grapple with that, I think then I buy into it more, but I don't
Right.
buy it here. I don't know, man. Like, especially because she's spending so much time trying to tell Deborah that faith is good and all of these things, and she's trying to make Deborah believe it because Deborah doesn't want to be
Right. I think the closest it got to working for me was the magazine sequence.
there. Yeah.
That
That's
felt
one of the
like
best moments in the movie.
a good scene. If it would have been a much better movie, that would have been a good. But right now, it does shine out this awesome scene. But I actually believed Irene at that moment. I believe Irene like started feeling that like kind of like sense of like I'm losing my faith. I need to fight something else. But to your point, that actually, in some ways, made everything else worse because that was actually good. It actually made sense, but
Yeah.
everything else seemed nonsensical again. It's like kind of like, oh, we'll go back to that. That was actually some good tone. See, Chavez, every once in a while, he like it's like a blind squirrel finding a nut. Like he finds a good moment and he gets it, but then he can't like surround it with anything. So it's like it just loses it, unfortunately. Oh, Shams, I keep
I don't know,
rooting for
man.
you,
Like,
but
I really wanted to believe, and I
you
said
did.
this, early on when it was even announced. I genuinely wanted to believe that Chavez coming into this was going to find himself a little more. Because again, I don't dislike The Conjuring 3, and
Right.
I think that La Llorona is not the best,
That's
but
not part of the
it's
Conjuring universe anymore, there, PJ. We don't talk about that.
okay. Let's do that conversation again. Hey, hey, guys who produced the fucking Conjuring movies, Peter Safran, looking at you, bud. You can't produce this movie, put footage from movies that are part of the Conjuring universe into it, and a character from the Conjuring universe into another movie, and then say, but it's not part of that universe.
Like what I
Go
say, not
fuck
good.
yourself. Because guess what? That movie, The Curse of La Llorona, Conjuring universe, baby. Annabelle's in it. Footage from Annabelle is in it. A character from Annabelle is in it. Peter Safran, just because you didn't produce it, but also allowed them to use that footage, guess what that means? Inherently, you are now a Conjuring film. Go fuck yourself.
I knew what I was doing there, folks. I apologize for setting PJ off. I knew it was going to happen, but it just
You
felt it.
son of a bitch. You played me like a fiddle.
I did. I really did.
You really
But
wanted
no,
that to happen again, didn't you?
I did. I wanted to see you burst. But to
Why
your
are you
point,
this Why are
I
you this way?
actually because you made me what I am. I don't know how, but you made me what I
You're
am.
you're older than I am, you son of a bitch. I didn't make shit.
I was just calm and peaceful at life until you dragged me into your world, and you just made me this person. I don't know how. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
But to your point, I actually agree with you because I actually also had faith. I think, in fact, I spouted my faith off to you that way. I was like, you know what, Curse of La Llorona was not great, but it was kind of just pedestrian.
I
But
like it
we
more than most
emphasized
people, but it's not great.
it's
Like, it's
competent.
fun. It's fine. Yeah.
It's a competent first film, and it works in the franchise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Went to The Conjuring 3. I'm like, okay, The Conjuring 3 was a step up from Curse of La Llorona. Good, he's making progressions. He's getting his footing. He's finding himself as a director potentially. Yeah, I had a lot of problems with Conjuring 3. It's definitely a step down from 1 and 2, but he's getting there. So the Nun 2 happened. I'm like, he has a good setup. We have Thaisa as a good character in Thaisa. We had Damien Bajir possibly, but I guess not. It was there for the taking, and this is just seems like such a massive step back, such a step back, to the point where,
It really
yeah,
does. And honestly, I don't want to say this sounding like some sort of an alarm, but one of the first things I said to you as I was walking out of the movie is I went, "Well, fuck, man. It might be time to put the franchise on ice for a little bit. It's starting to show it's feeling long in tooth." And I I mean, not that the box office, you know, the box office clearly will dictate that it's not going to matter what I'm about to say because it's already almost made $100 million on a $33 million budget.
Right.
But like, or $38 million budget, whatever it
Right.
is. But boy, man, like, I'll just say, as far as I'm concerned, this franchise is actually cratering a little bit and it's starting to feel rigid. And I actually miss when it felt more creative and more fun and more interesting and not just another bland horror film. And that and therein lies the problem is that because this feels so by the numbers and so not the movie that I thought it should be for the
Mhm.
franchise, I'm worried that it's actually going to make the Conjuring films as we move forward more bland and more disconnected and more just by the numbers. And I don't want that. The Conjuring
Yeah.
3 was already kind of going that way. And now
Yeah.
this, you know?
Interestingly enough, we got this idea. I'm looking at this now, the Conjuring universe. You obviously have the Conjuring, Annabelle, Conjuring 2, Annabelle Creation, The Nun. The Curse of La Llorona, which is Chavez's debut, was not a James Wan written story at all. That also probably has something to do
Right.
with it. Annabelle Comes Home, Gary Darwin tried something. Also, Gary Dogman wrote it with James Wan, which says something.
Yep.
Conjuring 3, James Wan did have a hand in writing it. So Michael Chavez, that's where I think that's probably where the step up happened for us. Michael Chavez was directing a James Wan partially at least written piece, so it gives that basis that
Right.
you need for the Conjuring franchise. So having down to the Nun II, Wan's not involved pretty much at all, besides like the executive producer kind of thing. I think
Right. And
that's the problem.
unlike the first Nun, where he was a lot more involved, we know that he worked with Corin Hardy and actually helped like shape the movie. And like he
Mhm,
shot with Corin Hardy that entire graveyard sequence, which
mhm.
I still contend is not only one of the best set pieces in the entire franchise, but it's one of the all-time graveyard film set
Yeah,
pieces.
agreed.
Like that whole sequence is terrifying.
So what you're telling me, honestly speaking, is we got to get James Wan back in this franchise any way, shape, or form. That's really what
No
it is,
shit, right? I
right?
mean, honestly, and not to like again, not to be an alarmist of it, but the farther away Juan feels from the franchise, the messier it gets.
And
That's
that's why
why I
I
like,
agree.
yeah, like it's why I like all the ones so much where he's so much more directly involved. It feels it in Annabelle Comes Home. It feels it in Annabelle Creation. It feels it in The Nun.
I do, yeah, I do. I'm do kind of hold interest in Conjuring 4, only because, again, like I said before, and I'll say it
Again,
again,
it's
Patrick Wilson and
yeah,
Vera have that chemistry for me. However, if I see that James Wan is just producing again, just executive producing again, I'm going to be very worried. I'm going to be worried because, to your point, Wan stepping away has done nothing but dilute the franchise further. And the further away we get, the worse it's going to get. I kind of feel hope, and I know we talked about this, and now that Aquaman 2 is coming out finally, and is going to be a trash movie if everything goes the way it sounds like it's going to go. Um, never know.
I'm
I'll
you
watch
know
it.
what? I'll say this. I'm still gonna watch it. Aquaman, as
Absolutely.
I've said, it's my favorite DC movie. A big part of it is because I just love James Wan. I feel for someone who's gotten kicked around by this many regimes making one movie and having
Right.
to have reshot it almost 4 times and
Mhm.
having had to test it and try to make a movie work when you have so many people telling you this needs to be changed, this needs to be changed, this person needs to be in it as Batman. Sorry, now this person needs to be in it as
Right.
Batman. Sorry, actually no Batman in the movie at all. Like
Right.
there is no world where I think Aquaman 2 ends up being as good as it should have been because too many people came in and did a
Right.
thing.
So I'm almost hoping that James, even though I know you argue about the Warner Brothers of it all, and I get it, I kind of feel like James Wan is more in control of the Conjuring universe, has a little bit more control over the Conjuring universe than he ever would have had at the DC side of things. Maybe he takes a breath, wants to come home, reset himself before he goes off and does his own thing again. Maybe the warmth of the Conjuring franchise, that little slice of home, will be beckoning him, and he can come home, make a great Conjuring 4 movie. Hopefully, he writes it, at least writes it, if not directs it himself.
I
I wish he
I
directs
would
himself.
love that if he was more involved because the more I think about it, some of my frustrations in this movie too, in particular, is that I look at what Chavez is trying to do and
Mhm.
I just get frustrated because he doesn't really build tension. He doesn't do things the way that I anticipate horror films to build tension when it's in a franchise like this that's very good at building tension. It's a thing that Sandberg was really good at doing. It's a thing that Dauerman's been very good at doing. It was a thing that Hardy was very good at doing, and it's a thing that Juan is very good at doing. Every one of these Conjuring films has like these great tense build moments, right? You have the great sequence, of course, of the hide and seek game in the original. You have the great sequences involving the the demon in Annabelle Creation when she's on the stair thing and she's trying to go up and is the thing there and all, like there's all those great builds. The Annabelle Comes Home with the what is it, the like rotating light color as the shadows keep changing
Yes.
before.
Love that.
Yeah, like there's so many things like that in these movies. There is not a single one of those in this. And there's like
No.
jump scare after jump scare, but there's no build to them. He just
Right.
does random bird flies across the camera and makes a loud noise when we do a cut. That is not the kind of jump scare I want.
No, I agree. It's pathetic. It's just that's all it is. It's pathetic. I didn't feel scared once during this entire film. Again, like the magazine sequence was the closest I got to it. Got to feel the tone, but everything else was just kind of like. I mean, every time they showed the nun, I kind of like. I didn't want to laugh. I just wasn't. When I saw the nun in The Conjuring 2, when I saw the nun in the nun, I was like, oh, there she is. There it is. This time I was kind of like, oh, there she is.
Yeah, I don't know. Valak kind of lost her teeth, if
Yeah,
I'm honest, as a
yeah.
character. And I do think that I blame a little bit of the fact that the movie doesn't feel focused on her.
No,
She's clearly like the villain, but honestly, kind of doesn't feel like it. Like they really make it the point that Maurice is just kind of the villain.
right. And that it makes it so much worse because they make Maurice be this like heroic kind of character with Sophie. And I know I get it. Maurice himself without Valak is a good dude. He's a good person. That's the kind of thing. Fine, I get that. But like when you focus it so much on Maurice and away from Valak, Valak is just going to be an afterthought because it's Valak Maurice that becomes the villain instead of Valak herself.
Right. I mean, like we lead with the fact that Maurice ends up killing a child.
Right. Right.
And that's one of those, I've talked about this a lot when it comes to Evil Dead 2014.
Mhm.
And people always get weird with me when I say I don't love the movie as much as everyone else, but part of it is, and I have explained this to you, the
Mhm.
moment that your heroine, even if she's possessed, kills the dog,
It's
the
tough.
innocent dog that you've brought, I can't really get behind the character at that point
Right.
because it's, to me, that's an unspeakable thing.
I
Like,
I get
you
that. I
know,
get that.
you don't kill the family dog.
Right.
That's what you just did with Maurice, though. You had him
Right.
kill a child.
And yeah, and they try to make up for it by having him befriend the child. And is the point? I guess that's my point. My question is: it be the point that you want him to be heroic, or is it the point that you need somebody to be put in danger? I don't know which is what they want to do.
I don't
'Cause
know. And I mean, they try to build this relationship with him and Kate, which I thought was kind of interesting. But the thing is it's really through her daughter.
it's so
And
pointless, right?
but the other thing that's uncomfortable about that with maybe it's the real world scenario right now of how people have been talking about people grooming people and stuff like that. The
Right.
ongoing joke about Maurice being this young girl's boyfriend was actually like wildly uncomfortable.
Yeah, and like and it shouldn't be because it's the kind of thing that like especially in that time period, it wasn't like I don't think there's
Right.
anything nefarious planned. At the same time, when you're setting up the character who is this like are you trying to separate Maurice? I don't know, was that a purposeful thing? Are they trying to set up that Maurice is good and he has this relationship? Or is like, oh, he's even like grooming this kid and that he's really got Valak and like I don't understand what the intention was behind it.
Right. And it's weird.
Yeah,
And
it's very
so
weird.
because of that, I never thought Maurice was that interesting of a character as it was. But to do that, like it's just very odd. And
Mhm.
sure, I'll say this: it was fun seeing Anna Popplewell in a film. I hadn't seen her in a while, since the Narnia days.
I forgot who she was. I kinda like, "She looks familiar. Who is it?" Am I like Oh, okay. It's an Ernie. It's okay. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
it took me about 15 minutes to figure it out too. I was
Right.
sitting there going, "Why do I recognize her?" And I'm starting to go through like the Rolodex. I was like, "Was she in Doctor Who? Was she?"
No.
I just assumed it was a British television thing for a second, and then I
Yeah, I
went, "Oh
get that.
no, that's actually Narnia."
Yep, that's what it is. Makes
And
sense.
so that was kind of fun. But like again, what does Kate have to do with anything other than she's there to kind of be terrorized by Maurice by the time this is all said and done? And I think that is another one of my big things. I kind of said it earlier, but like I don't care about any of the characters in this movie. There's
No.
not a single one of them that I actually like believe in or give a shit about. Like Sophie is kind of fine, but kind of fine is not a really ringing endorsement for a good character. I don't know anything about her by the time it's over.
No, she's just a girl who makes friendship bracelets. That's all we know.
Right.
I mean,
And I
Irene is
don't
a character that I like, but that's only partially because of her nostalgia factor from the
another
first
movie.
film. The first
Yeah.
film. None of the new characters mean anything. And like,
Right. And that's weird
well,
because Annabelle Comes Home makes me feel things. The characters
right,
in that movie go like on a real emotional journey and it's interesting and you actually give a shit about it?
right.
But here you don't. And that's really frustrating and really strange and it just doesn't make sense. And
I love it.
it's weird because to me, the Conjuring franchise as a whole, part of what has always made it work in all of our minds, I think, is that they are very human and they very much work in the confines of making them feel like human stories.
Yeah,
And this one doesn't do that. And it's
right.
just odd.
I uh, it's odd on so many levels, and I wish I'm trying to find. We are a very positive twosome, generally speaking, and I try to find the positive. Like we hate bashing movies our entire podcast. We like to try to find the good because we know that out there probably somebody loved this film. There's someone out there who's like Nun II is my favorite film of 2023, and more power to you. Like I don't want to rank on your likes or anything like that, but I'm struggling to find anything I really liked in this movie.
I thought that there was a couple of decent set pieces. I will give him that. Like I said, I thought the opening was actually super well done. I thought the first 10 minutes of the movie really stood out more than almost anything else.
And
Um,
the magazine scene was
and the
something that
magazine
I pointed
sequence is
out.
really fantastic. I think that Teza, of course, is great. She's Teza
Right,
Farmiga. Like that's who she is. She's just
right,
talented. She's as talented as her sister, and
right,
that's
right.
just true. She is.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's
But
really it.
I mean, like, there's a sequence in this that's very odd because it's so close to the opening of Dial of Destiny that I can't get over the fact that two set pieces within a couple of months are so close together, set inside of a church.
Right, right.
And I guess that sequence is kind of okay, but even at then, I was just kind of so out of it at that point that it didn't matter. Because the truth is, this movie's pace is so fucking slow. It takes it so long, and it's not until it gets to the third act that stuff finally starts to happen. And at that
Mhm.
point, it's too little, too late. Also, I think I know what the connection is now that we're talking about it out loud. Why do we see the Warrens home?
That's a great point. That's a great question.
That has to be it, right? That has to be the connection. But
Yeah,
why do we see the hallway from the Warrens' home with Valak in it when also this is set way
years
earlier than those
before. Yeah,
movies?
years before. I don't know. That's a good question. But it seems like that's exactly my point, though, is that I mean, this has a chance to be proven wrong if we get to the Conjuring 4 and it's something that's connected, but otherwise it just feels like a random happenstance of wanting to pull from a more successful part of the franchise to go, hey, part of the Conjuring. Um, maybe that might be all it is too. I don't know. I
No,
don't
it
know.
might. It's just very odd. Also, again, to the point of all this, right? Like I've said that so many times today. I'm sorry. I just I'm kind of like in this downward spiral now where I'm looking at all the things where I'm just frustrated now because there's also this entire thing where the girls are playing this game throughout the movie where the devil appears to them, the goat devil, but they're talking about it on this stained glass window, which of course is the key to the MacGuffin of the movie.
Right,
But
of course.
then a real life devil goat person shows up, and it's
Mhm.
such a weird sequence, and it's the one time that they build it to give Storm this moment of saving these girls, but I don't feel like we it matters. Like, it's a weird sequence because, again, I don't care about the characters.
Right, right. Absolutely, that's the problem. You have to have in series like this, just one key thing you need for a successful horror movie is either a overwhelming monster that you can get behind, or characters you want to root for to survive the film. This one has neither. It has a toothless
Yeah.
phallic and has characters that I really couldn't give a shit about, unfortunately.
Well, and I think that's because they make it this point that Valak can take the scariest form of the thing that would freak you out the most. And so for the one girl, it's the demon goat. The other one, it's the deadhead mistress. And even
Mm,
then, like, although I'll say that was the other sequence I really did like. It's a little too dark for its own good, but the sequence with involving Madame Laurent in when she goes into the church and she sees her son, the dead altar boy, and he
okay.
starts to attack her, that sequence is great. The kill is fantastic, and it is the
Yes.
closest thing to something Hammer horror in the entire film.
I'll agree with that. I did forget about it, but now that you bring it up, that was actually a good moment for the thing, because you learn a lot about her and her backstory, far more like. But to your point, though, in a way, it showcases what's bad about the rest of the film. Like I knew and cared about her and her backstory in like 5 minutes more than I cared about anything else in the shit in the movie. That's part of the
Yeah,
problem. But you're right. That
and I
sequence was well done.
that sequence is really well done, and it makes me wonder why the rest of the movie couldn't be that way because it shows Chavez does have the talent to do the build, and the way it was done was really cool.
Mhm.
Although the other thing too that I was thinking about is he went really overboard with the, you know what, let's just do creepy kid stuff. Like this is not
Right.
Children of the Corn. It's
Right.
not. And stop like
Right.
doing creepy kid stuff. Like that is also the thing that the Annabelle movies have already done. And the Nun 2 is just taking stuff from better Conjuring films and trying to do it here, and it's just not working. Because it
Right.
also wants to be Annabelle Comes Home with all the different creepy creatures, right? Devil Goat, Valak, the creepy
Right.
deadhead mistress, all these different things that we're pulling together because the other, well, it worked for Annabelle Comes Home. Yeah, but it worked for Annabelle Comes Home because the setup was there for it.
Right, and even then, I wasn't even a fan of some of that, as you know. So
Yeah.
you put it down. I was much more a fan of it in Annabelle Comes Home than I was in this one. That's for sure. Um, there was one other Easter egg connection that we didn't really mention at one point, and when Sister Irene starts immolating her fire, she does get this vision of Saint Lucy, and there is a shot at one point of Vera Farmiga as well. So they are
Wait, did I
really
miss
are
that?
there is, and I remember now that it was a brief thing, and I just looked it up to make sure, 'cause I remember it kind of briefly coming back, and there's a shot real quickly of Vera Farmiga during that sequence. So that tells me they will be connecting them, and that makes
Yep,
me
they're
happy at least that they
absolutely
are,
going through that.
because that makes sense, and that's fine. I'm happy with them doing that because I think if they dropped the ball on that after setting it up for so long, it would have been such a mistake, such a mistake. So hopefully that takes place and that works. So I do like that then, because I do want to see that conclude. So that's another drop of positivity about that. At least they continue to set that up, and we're going to see hopefully a conclusion at some point.
So apparently, yeah, I just looked. The Nun 2 confirms that Tesa Farmiga and Vera Farmiga's characters in the Conjuring universe were connected through a shared bloodline, apparently.
Right, somehow. So I don't know what that necessarily is. So somehow familial in there. That's fine.
Well, I mean, we all kind of assumed that they would have to do that. It only
Right.
makes sense, but I started to really back off of it because I just didn't. I don't know. After this, I couldn't figure out how they were going to try to pull that off, but I guess they have their idea and good for them. I just don't see it yet. So
Yeah,
that
I don't
must be
know.
the point of the Conjuring 4. But does that mean we're going to actually see them come together as characters?
I hope
But like,
so.
but here's the thing: it obviously can't be Tessa unless you put a lot of makeup on her to
Hmm.
make her older.
Well, I mean, this was like 1956, I think, right?
Yeah.
And we first meet Vera in 1970s. So, well, Yeah, she'll have to be a lot older. They won't. 'Cause they won't recast. It'd be stupid. It would be the stupidest thing in the world for them to recast when you have the Farmigas. If they're part of the family, they are part of the family. So it would have to be a heavily makeup um, Thais at that point, I think. But I'd
I'm
rather have
looking because
that.
out of curiosity, yeah, because Lorraine was born in 1927.
Right.
So
And so they're
now I'm
not
just like
mother
doing,
daughter, right? It's not mother daughter at all. It's definitively has to be something like a cousin or something like that potentially down the line. But
but I mean
it's
that means that she would have been in her 30s by the time this movie is basically happening, is what I'm getting at. So we
right.
must meet them in the 70s in her 50s, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So we're figuring it out. Well, hopefully they'll figure it out.
I'm looking. I'm spending so much time thinking about
Yeah,
this. Sorry, because it's like now I'm trying to break down in my head how it's going to work.
right. Me too. Same thing. I'm kind of like, can it work? I'd rather see a stab at it though than not do it at all. So give me a stab at it. Hopefully it's written that
I
way. I do
I
know
only
that I
hope
looked.
that Juan is involved more in doing that because I
I
don't want
hope so
them to
too.
do it the other way. You know?
I hope so too. I'm a little wary. I mean, it does say again, this is Wikipedia, so I mean, take that for what it's worth. In October 2022, Hollywood Reporter revealed that a fourth Conjuring film was in development, and it was supposed to be just written by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, not Juan. But David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick did write The Conjuring 2. He did write Aquaman for James Wan. He worked with James Wan a lot. He did write Conjuring 3, but again, that was part of it was Wan. He wrote Orphan and Orphan First Kill, which I've heard it was actually pretty. I know Orphan was good.
I
I've
really
heard
liked
Orphan.
Orphan First Kill a lot.
He wrote that as well, so that's good. Um, and he did write Aquaman too, but I don't think I'm going to put that on him at all. That seems like much more of a studio fuck up than anything else that he had
Yeah.
coming. So I won't put that on him. So he does have a good background. So maybe if he does work with Juan, maybe in the background more, he'll get more heavily involved. That'll make it work. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. But this at this point in this case, I know they've already talked about another Annabelle movie as well. But I kind of feel like we should just wrap it up with Conjuring 4 and be done with it at that point.
That's kind of where I'm at too. Like, I just think that maybe the franchises start, like I said, kind of just spinning its wheels, unfortunately, at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it might just be time to wrap it up and call it a day.
And I'm okay with that. I guess the only way I would accept another, like, if they did an Annabelle movie in between the Nun II and Conjuring 4 because of the strikes and everything else, then fine. I get that. I'll accept that. But having a Conjuring 4 and then having more movies after that in the franchise, it seems like it's a stupid idea. It feels like you should start with a Conjuring movie and end with a Conjuring movie, and everything else is in between. That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd be fine with that. I'm really ready to just kind of call it with the series because I would rather it end on a high note. Like,
yeah.
look, it'll never be the first two. It won't be.
No.
I mean, if Juan comes back, it has a potential to match them,
Oh.
but I still don't contend that's a thing that's very likely to happen. So,
Yeah.
because of that, I would rather it end on a much higher potential note in just let's say goodbye to the characters, and it being called Last Right just tells me
Screams it.
that seems to be the ending, and that's
Right.
good, and that's fine, and that's really what it probably should be.
Absolutely.
We know that the Crooked Man movie is dead, but that'll probably be turned into an episode of the TV show, is my assumption. And I think that's the thing is that the TV show can kind of exist outside of it as a Twilight Zone, Black Mirror anthology sort of thing about the, basically the stuff inside the Warrens museum.
It's basically a remake of Friday the 13th, the series, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is not a bad thing.
And that's
not a bad
fine.
thing. Yeah.
But also, again, maybe not a thing we need it to do.
Correct.
I don't know, man. I'm feeling a little burned out and a little sad, and that's probably because I love these movies so much that the fact that I can say out of the last 4 movies, I only really, really love one of them, and I kind of like one of the others is not the best track record, and
No.
that just bums me out.
Agreed. And you know what? Maybe it's time to rank it and get this over with at this point. Unless you have any other final thoughts?
No,
you
I'm good.
wanna
I think I've said my piece. Is there do you
Yeah.
have an update on all of our rankings just so I
I
can
do. I do. I'm breaking this out specifically because we haven't talked about this in a while. All right,
That's why I
so
have to ask.
The Conjuring, we both gave a 10.5 out of 11 because we always rank things from 1 to 11 here on PLD Projects. Trying
Yes.
to 11. Conjuring 1, 10.5 for both of us. Annabelle got a 2 for both of us. Conjuring
Wow.
2 got a Conjuring 2 got a 10.5 out of both of us. Annabelle Creation, I gave it a 6. You gave it an 8. The Nun, I gave it a 7.5. You gave it a 7. The Curse of La Llorona, I gave a 5.5. You gave it a 6. Annabelle Comes Home, we both gave a 9. And then The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, I gave it a 7.5 and you gave it a 7.
Okay. We're very in sync with this franchise outside
Yeah, it's
of
funny.
Creation. That's still the weirdest thing to me. Like, I still just can't wrap my head around it. All right, so with that, I guess that means that I'm going to be honest, man. I don't have a lot of nice things in the end to say about this one as much as I thought. I'm more frustrated about it because I still think it potentially breaks the universe in a way that it either intentionally or unintentionally meant to. Not super thrilled now that it seems like magic bloodlines is a thing within the franchise even more. That bothers me a lot, actually. It is a thing I never wanted us to go down that rabbit hole, and now here we are. It actually makes Lorraine less interesting to me. Instead, if there's magic bloodlines involved being related to St. Lucy, and you know what I'm saying? Like, I
Right.
kind of liked when she was just a normal character.
That's fair. That's fair. Doesn't bother me
So
as
in
much,
saying
so,
all
but I
that,
get that. But in saying all that,
no, it's just frustrating, you know. But there's a couple of good scares. I still like Valak. I like Teza a lot in it. I thought Storm did what she could. I think I have to give this a 5.
wow. Okay,
Because
here's the funny thing.
it's still way more competent than Annabelle. Like, as hard as I am on this one, it's still way more competent overall, and I will revisit it more.
Well, that's good.
My hope
I'm
is
happy
that
for
I
you.
actually start to come around on it more, but I know I'll revisit this one more in the end than I probably will ever. Like, I will never watch Annabelle again. I just won't.
I only watch Annabelle if I'm doing a Conjuring marathon, and I
Right.
don't plan to do that very often. It's funny. I'm only smiling and laughing about it because we had I put my text in the thread. We had a text conversation. It wasn't a very long one.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to have too much, but
Well,
I
yeah, because
kind
I
of
didn't
felt
want us
like
to get too into it before we
same.
talked about it on here.
But the feeling I had was that you actually even liked it less than I did. So I was expecting you to be lower than me, when in fact you actually end up being higher than me.
No shit, really.
I do. I gave it more credit than Annabelle. I put it at a 3.5.
Shit. Wow.
I really did not like it. I was bored out of my skull. Everything seemed so sanitized to me. There's not much I had to like. I did like that like I said, the magazine sequence. I feel the sequences I appreciated, but at the end of the day, I could maybe give it up to a 4 on a second viewing, depending. Maybe I'll be ready for it and it'll change. But right now, 3.5 is where it's at for me.
You know what? I respect that.
There you go. So that's where we are, folks. We never even mentioned that. This is our special secret episode because we were
Yeah.
obviously in the middle of the Friday the 13th franchise. But we figured if a movie comes out in a franchise or IP that we've already covered, then we should probably try to sneak in that extra bonus episode for you because we love you. We love our listeners. But I'm very happy to be going back to the Friday the 13th franchise after this.
Yeah,
So
I am too, honestly.
So therefore, you get us for a third week in a row.
Also, right now, I just read this. Apparently, they wanted to bring Burke back in the movie as a zombie. That's what Chavez wanted to do. Boy, howdy, am I glad that didn't happen at the end of the day. And yes, I just said boy, howdy out loud on here. But this just once again tells me how little I want Chavez continually involved because he's taking the franchise in drastically two out there directions that I am not enjoying the franchise going.
Did Damien Bashir reject it, or was it changed at some point?
No, apparently it doesn't say who, but he said that it was killed before he got a chance.
Okay. Well, whoever killed it, good on you. Good on you. My God. All right.
Java's
Well,
must be
I
stopped.
all I know is that next week's episode is going to be much more of a love fest because I already know without a shadow of a doubt that we both highly enjoy Friday the 13th, the final chapter.
Yes, we do.
And so I can't wait to watch that again and talk about that with you. So I'm happy to get you. We used to be a weekly podcast. We kind of dive back into this whole bi-weekly thing, but it's nice to be able to every once in a while slip the extra episode in. Hopefully the next time we get an extra episode, it'll be much more of a love fest because I love being positive with you more than anything else. I love geeking out with you about these things.
Me too. Me
I
too.
didn't get to do that this week, of course, too much. But that's that. If you haven't ever been here before, and this is not what we usually are like, we're usually more positive. I promise you. Find some other episodes, you'll see. But click that like, click that subscribe. Let us know you're here. If you're on the audio feed, give us that rating. That 5-star rating helps out the podcast quite a bit. And furthermore, patreon.com/PLD projects. You can join such stalwart individuals as Austin Goodell, Jeremiah Morris, Matthew Kearns, Brandon Buckingham, Jeff Alterman, all of you and the rest of the crew. We could not do this without you. You really help keep the lights on. Let us be able to do this. So thank you so much. I love it. PJ, where can the folks find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Threads at PJ Campbell, and Instagram as well. Yes, it's still Twitter, by the way. I refuse to call it the other name. You guys can also find me here hanging out. And PLD and I have some stuff coming up, which I'm excited about. And then I've got some other things I'm working on that I'm excited about. So catch me.
I can't wait. I can't wait for you to let that out. So it is gonna be very exciting. Find me at Paul Denuzio on the old Twitter, PLD Projects on Threads. I think there's Paul Denuzio on Blue Sky. I'm there somewhere. And you can find me here all over this channel. Obviously, we do Holy Snooks is up tomorrow. Me, Matty Gunner, will be breaking down what promises to be a very, very special episode of Ahsoka tonight. I'm hoping it lives up to my own personal hype because I'm cannot wait to watch. We got review coming out next week. We got our next episode where I covered the V franchise with Lego. A lot of fun we're having on that one. If you can tell by the comments I make on Twitter when I post the thread, I have a great time with her talking about what is series that is really jumping the shark quickly, but I'm still having fun watching it. And also the Queen franchise, Crown Jewel, to do that every Friday this week. Queen gets a little more socially conscious with a song called White Man. That's it. That's it, folks. Until next time, of course, stay mediocre and never underestimate the power of mediocrity. Goodbye now.